This is the story of a journey that began 1400 years ago, from continent to continent, from generation to generation. It has inspired the creation of some of the most extraordinary buildings in the world.
You're connected to the future and the past.
And this mosque is one of the mosques that the whole world speaks about.
Buildings which tell a story through times of conflict and confrontation.
Sure, they'll change who owns what at any given time, but destroying, that's a very different matter.
Of harmony and achievement.
A structure with a very deep past, but hopefully also with a very vibrant future.
A place where the journey began. A journey made through the centuries. A journey still being made for the first time today. A journey that now brings millions of people every year to a single building in a single city.
I feel like I have to go there for my soul.
It's the biggest wish of my life.
A journey into an entire way of life. It is the story of what Muslims believe.
I think it's a religion of peace. Some people have forgotten that.
This is the story of Islam. A story told through our own journey around 7 wonders of the Muslim world. Five times a day all over the world, hundreds of millions of people punctuate their daily lives with prayer. They start at dawn. They are timed to follow the sun across the sky until it sets. After dark, the final prayer is said. As Islam has spread, these prayers have become part of daily life across the whole world. And it's through prayer that every Muslim in the world is continually connected, all praying in the direction of the city where their religion began. The first and most important wonder of the Muslim world. Mecca. Mecca, the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad and the religion he began teaching 1400 years ago. In the Grand Mosque in Mecca stands the building known as the Kaaba. This is the single most important site in Islam. Every time any Muslim anywhere in the world say their prayers, they face in the direction of this single building.
The Kaaba is just something which is the house itself, the way it was built. This is the meaning in Arabic. But in fact, it's the symbol of God's house, where He's not here, but it's the symbol of His presence on earth, where the Muslims has to go and there is no images, nothing there to represent Him, because we should not represent God. So it's a place without a physical presence, but a spiritual presence.
In essence, the most beautiful thing about Mecca is the Kaaba itself, and its beauty is in its simplicity. It's a black box, and it's a black box which people circumambulate, and it is just so divinely simple and yet so divinely beautiful. It's a very peaceful place. Even you can be in the middle with 2 million people and be at peace, because it's been dedicated to God for so long.
It was the Prophet Muhammad who ensured even today the Kaaba is the symbol of the one true God. But Muslims believe the origins of Mecca as a holy place predates Muhammad and goes right back to the birth of humanity. The land on which Mecca is built and the surrounding hills are said to have been of importance since the days of Adam and Eve. It was at Mount Arafat, near the city of Mecca, that Muslims believe Adam and Eve found each other after being cast out of paradise. Muslims believe The original Kaaba was built under divine instructions by another figure common to Christianity and Judaism, Abraham. Its purpose, a shrine to the one true God of all people and all times.
Abraham built the Kaaba as a symbol of unity of God. If you like, it's the center of monotheism. That's where monotheism actually begins. And it personifies the idea that there is only one God.
Millions of Muslims visit the city every year on a pilgrimage centered on the Kaaba. For many Muslims, to cast eyes on the Kaaba for the first time is a moment of truth.
The first time I went inside the Haram, the sacred mosque in Mecca, it was really an awe-inspiring moment. I mean, as you walk in and you see the Kaaba and people kind of circumambulating around it, it's almost like a sea of people. You can actually, I mean, when you walk in and just stand there and look, you know, it's almost like a river going around the Kaaba, and the atmosphere is absolutely electric with the spirituality. I mean, you can actually feel, if it is possible, the presence of God, and you really do feel humble. And I've seen Muslims walking inside the Haram, and the first thing that you notice when they walk in is the tears come in their eyes. It actually shows you how insignificant you are as an individual, as a human being in the sight of God.
It is to this building that Muslims all over the world turn to 5 times a day to pray. As they do, they reaffirm the message of the Prophet. There is only one true God, and Muhammad is a messenger of God, the last of the prophets. A message that has created a religion followed by over 1 billion people today across the world. Among them are 6 first-time pilgrims. All have a dream to come to Mecca and are hoping to make the journey in the next few days. All live near and pray in some of the world's most important and most beautiful mosques. Outside Saudi Arabia, Jerusalem is the holiest city in the Islamic faith. Before Muslims prayed to Mecca, it was towards Jerusalem they directed their prayers. It is a city steeped in Islamic history. In almost every view of Jerusalem, you can see the slate-grey dome of our next wonder of the Muslim world, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and alongside it, the striking golden Dome of the Rock. Built within a few decades of the Prophet's death, it contains the stone from which Muslims believe Muhammad journeyed as he ascended to heaven.
The site of the Dome of the Rock is important for all 3 monotheistic religions. It's venerated by the Jews because that's where their temple was. It's venerated by the Christians for the connection with Jesus, who spent so much of his life in Jerusalem and taught there. And Muslims believe that it was from that very site that Muhammad set off on his miraculous journey to the 7 heavens. And indeed Muslims believe that this is where the Last Judgment will take place. It's very much in the style of a Christian building of the time, with perfect geometrical proportions. It's a double octagon, and with the favorite Christian decoration of the time, which is glass mosaic. What's different is that it has no figures on it, and instead it's almost an oasis, a fertile oasis of strange and wonderful supernatural plants. The survival of the great Muslim buildings of Jerusalem has to do with the veneration that Jews and Christians, as well as Muslims, have for the site. It's not an accident that the Dome of the Rock still stands after 1400 years, in spite of all those wars, and the Aqsa is the same. We're looking at a protected place, a sacred place, that all 3 religions venerate, and they're not going to muck around with it. Sure, they'll change who owns what at any given time, but destroying that's a very different matter.
Jerusalem is a divided city that has been destroyed twice, besieged 22 times, and been captured and recaptured 44 times. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock is a sight that 23-year-old Sameh ad-Din sees every day as he drives about the city, working as a courier delivering newspapers. Sameh is a Palestinian living in East Jerusalem, where he grew up. Alongside the Dome of the Rock stands the Al-Aqsa Mosque. After two mosques in Saudi Arabia in Mecca and Medina, it is the third most revered mosque in the Muslim world. When he can, Sameh finds refuge here. Today he's come to say late afternoon prayers called Asr, one of the 5 daily prayers said by Muslims all over the world. Asr stands out because it's one of the 2 daily prayers to be made silently.
I feel that first of all, when I enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque, I relax. I feel myself to be happy. I leave the whole world behind me. I forget worries and forget problems. When I'm totally fed up, I like to come and sit here, pray, read the Quran, and gaze all around at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I wander around the courtyards and so on. I mean, it's something very, very lovely. You just look and you feel happy. It's a place of worship as well. I come more than once a week, definitely for Friday prayers, and whenever I can find the time.
The Al-Aqsa Mosque is one of the oldest in the world. The architecture is not unlike a church at first sight, but the symbolism differs in important ways.
The Aqsa Mosque, we're looking at something that was probably first built in the late 7th century, a place for thousands of people to worship at one time. The idea is that of a basilica, that is not a dome building, but a pitched roof building, a bit like a parish church, if you like, with a central nave and 2 aisles, except that in this case there's not 1 aisle on each side but 5, so you get a very, very broad building. And you have to think how this extra scale turns into something that has emotional and symbolic force as well. This idea of an endless space, an endless repetitive space, a vanishing point with implications of infinity and eternity.
The 5 aisles in the Al-Aqsa Mosque reflect the significance of the number 5 in Islam. There are 5 pillars of belief, and many mosques have 5 minarets, and prayers are said 5 times a day.
There's a story attached to the 5 times a day, where the Prophet's making the journey to God, and God's saying, pray, and as he's coming down, and Prophet Moses is saying, oh, how many times a day? And it's this enormously large number. He says, I'll never manage that, and he goes back up, and it comes down with a smaller number, and Prophet Moses says, I'm never going to manage that, and goes back up, and finally gets it down to 5 times a day, and Prophet Moses says, never going to manage that, go back up. But the Prophet, by this point, is just too embarrassed to go back up to God, so he sticks to that. The 5 times a day is part of a daily rhythm, ultimately. It follows the pattern of the day.
The inspiration for the design and the architecture, which has led to the creation of such splendor and beauty, comes from the verses of the Quran. Muslims believe that the Quran is the word of God as revealed to his messenger Muhammad. That belief is what forms the first pillar of their faith. As we continue our journey, we'll explore each of the 5 pillars of Islam. Same's family home overlooks the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. These buildings act as a constant reminder how their faith has always coexisted with Christianity and Judaism in their city and across the world. At the end of the day, Same's family prayed together, not towards the building behind them, as all Muslims once did, but to Mecca, the place to which prayer has been directed for over 1,000 years, and the city that Same is hoping to visit for the first time in the next few days. In a very different part of the world, Isa is also planning his first trip to Mecca. He'll set off from the Spanish city of Granada, home to one of the most beautiful buildings in Europe, the Alhambra Palace, and our next wonder of the Muslim world. The call for the dawn prayers in Granada, Spain, starts the day for 19-year-old Isa Lopez. Before praying, he goes through a process of ritual washing, cleaning his hands, face and feet. Isa was born into a Spanish Muslim family and grew up in Granada, near the famous Alhambra, our next wonder of the Muslim world.
Bueno, me siento orgulloso porque Granada es mi ciudad donde nací.
Well, I feel proud because Granada is my city. It's the place where I was born, where I grew up. So, of course, when people come from far away to see your city, to see Alhambra, to see everything that's linked to it and find out about Granada, you feel proud.
Granada has a very important place in the hearts and memories of Muslims. The Alhambra stands across the valley from the mosque where Isa says his prayers. Designed by Muslim architects and built in the 13th century by the Arab rulers of Andalusia, the Alhambra is a celebration of Islamic design and beauty, inspired by the Quranic visions of paradise.
In the Quran, there are 22 separate references to gardens beneath which rivers flow. So for a Muslim, the recurrent image of paradise is an oasis. Shady trees, and among them, buildings. Splendid buildings, tiered buildings, pavilions, palaces. Now, that is the set of ingredients out of which paradise is formed in the Quran, in a physical sense. And the Alhambra could be regarded as a recreation of that on earth.
The Alhambra is one of Europe's most visited tourist attractions. But few visitors will notice Granada's new mosque, across the valley where Isa comes to say the first prayer of the day. The morning prayer, Fajr, can be performed at any time between the breaking of the dawn till just before sunrise. Some Muslims say that it is the prayer most favorably looked upon by God because others are asleep while it's being performed.
Well, the prayer of Fajr for me is of utmost importance because it's the way that one starts the day. If you start praying early, doing your prayer either in company or alone in your house, and you know, it's really important for me because you wake up and you pray and it starts the day on the right note.
This is the first mosque to be built in Granada for nearly 500 years. It took the city authorities 20 years before they gave the go-ahead for the work to start. Spain's relationship with Islam is a complicated and long-standing one. It goes back over 1,000 years to the 8th century, to the Arab conquest of southern Spain, after which began a golden age that saw the building of the Alhambra and lasted for 800 years.
I think it's very significant that the new mosque in Granada overlooks Alhambra. In a way, it is reclaiming the history of which Alhambra is a part. It is saying that Islam has a long history in Europe. So it's reclaiming the history, Muslim history of Europe, the period, 800 years period of Moorish Spain, where thought, culture, civilization and learning flourished, where three monotheistic faiths worked so well together for so long.
Isa's parents converted to Islam before he was born. In the 1970s, they were part of a liberal post-Franco Spain, freshly experiencing a newly discovered religious tolerance.
Several things happened at once, and we were in a state of seeking or looking for an alternative, something to fill our lives, and Islam crossed our path. Strange, because it wasn't something that had featured historically, in books or at school, and it's odd, because Andalusia itself has a strong connection with Islam. But of course, all they told us was that the Moors arrived, conquered the south of Spain, and were then thrown out. That's all we knew about their culture, about Islam here in Spain. We got to know a community established here in Granada. They spoke to us, they opened up their arms and their doors to us, and we all shared the same feelings. That's what we wanted, to make a change. That's what made us join Islam and understand existence from another point of view.
When Isa's parents decided to convert, they had to perform the first pillar of Islam, the Shahada.
Well, the Muslim devotional life revolves around what are known as 5 pillars of Islam. And we begin with the Shahada, that is the witness I give that I am a Muslim, which is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. That, in fact, is the declaration of faith.
When you understand the Shahada, you understand everything which is connected with Islam, which is oneness of God. There is no other God but Him. And this is something which is quite important here. It's just your own ego, idols, anything which has to do, anything that you can worship, money, even your own kids. Be careful. So this is oneness of God. And then you follow the last prophet, and the last prophet is, once again, the last of many other prophets. So it's a universal message of respecting all the prophets, Jesus, Abraham, Moses, and all the others that we know and don't know even. So this is something which is it's embodied the whole teachings of Islam.
So the Shahada is confirming that Allah is the only God, that the Prophet Muhammad was a messenger, that you welcome it into your heart performing the Shahada, and from then on you are a Muslim. For me it is the most powerful pillar. It is the pillar you must accept first.
The Shahada is what defines a Muslim, whether one is born into the faith or converts to it. It is the first words a Muslim baby hears, and the last words before they die. They are words of monumental significance. It binds the Muslim world together. Granada has about 15,000 Muslims today, mostly Moroccan and Syrian immigrants, and North African students. When in a few days Isa sets off to make his pilgrimage to Mecca, he will be the first of his friends to do so.
I mean, I have a lot of friends which aren't Muslims, but they respect me, I respect them. I play football with them, or I go, I don't know, bowling, play snooker,
we
or
hang
just
around
go
all
and
together.
chill out. I mean, they're sort of like family because they're grown up together, and that creates like a strong bond between them. But then you meet someone and you know he's a Muslim, so he's basically on the same path as you, so the friendship grows stronger, I think.
Isa and his family and friends are part of a new chapter for Islam in Europe. Something represented by both the historic tourist attraction of the Alhambra and by the new Granada Mosque.
It is saying to Europe that you have an Islamic history too. That what you are today, you owe some of it to the history of Islam. Liberalism, humanism, the great seeds of learning, all that came from Moorish Spain. So there's double connection. Muslims have a real presence in Europe in terms of history. And the Muslims of today are not alien to Europe. They are part and parcel of that history.
1,000 miles east is another building on the edge of the European continent. It reflects how the beliefs of Islam underpinned an entire empire. The Ottoman Empire, which left its mark across Europe and beyond from its seat of power in Istanbul. 400 years ago, work started on one of the most celebrated buildings in Europe, the Blue Mosque, and our third wonder of the Islamic world. The building tells the story of the city around, showing the influences of the different civilizations that have governed it. The interior is lined with 20,000 blue tiles that give the mosque its name and tell the story of the sumptuousness that was the Ottoman Empire. "260 stained glass windows speak of the influence of Byzantine church building.
When I think of mosque, any mosque in my mind's eye, the mosque that comes to me is the Blue Mosque, because I think it symbolizes the zenith of Muslim civilization. To me, it speaks volume about Muslim thought and learning, sophistication, the architecture that we could develop. And I see it as, if you like, a symbol of hope, that perhaps what we achieved in the past, we could also achieve in the future. So, Blue Mosque for me is not just a beautiful, sublime building, an awe-inspiring building. It is also a structure of hope, a structure with a very deep past, but hopefully also with a very vibrant future.
Erhan Yekelci is heading into the Blue Mosque to say his early afternoon prayers, called Zuhr. This prayer takes place immediately after the sun has begun to decline, and can continue until it is halfway on its course to setting.
I say my prayers because I need them. I feel the need to say them. By saying my prayers, I can establish a personal relationship with God. I can talk to Him, and this makes my life the one that He chooses for me. I think being a Muslim is a constant struggle. It's like being in a constant struggle. You always try to make the correct choice. Most important of all, a good Muslim should be a good human being, because I think Islam tries to make a good human being out of every Muslim.
Prayers play a fundamental role in Muslim life. They form the second pillar of Islam.
Every practicing Muslim, because you say the Shahada to become a Muslim and then you become a practicing Muslim. So it's to pray 5 times a day, and this is an obligation for the practicing Muslims. Why 5? Once again, we are not sure. We don't know about the numbers. What we have to understand is just to remember God and to remind yourself that you have to go close to Him. So this is exactly what is said in the Quran. I remember you, I love you, I want to serve you, and I want to serve humanity by serving you.
It's making a physical demonstration of what you're trying to do. As you stand there, you're bearing witness. You're at those moments of standing, you're reciting the Quran, you're bowing, and you're talking about the power of God. And then finally, you're going into prostration, and all glory is due to you. And you've taken, your head, the thing we consider superior, our topmost thing, our ego perhaps, and we're reducing it right down to the lowest point and prostrating that before God.
Whatever divides the followers of Islam, and however their daily lives differ around the world, the pull of Mecca unites them. On the next part of our journey, we'll leave Europe and see what happens on a Friday in a unique mosque in West Africa. It is the tallest mud-built mosque, our next wonder of the Muslim world. A hot, dusty, early Friday afternoon in Jenne, Mali. Islam came to Mali through Arab traders in the 12th century. Today it is one of the largest countries in Africa, but also one of the poorest in the world. In the ancient city of Jenne stands this amazing mud-built mosque. It was first built in the 13th century by one of the earliest Muslim rulers of the area. Amadou Cham grew up in Jenne. He now lives with his family in the capital city of Bamako, but visits the city often.
The Mosque of Jenne is one of the oldest mosques in the whole world. Jenne itself is a great town which has really known great Islamic civilization. And I think this mosque, which was first built in 13th century, it's part of the great national heritage. The pious people who built it, and the good people who built it, and how Islam was actually, so much precious to them that they were able to build such a huge mosque, which today is considered to be the tallest building in the whole world, constructed in mud.
The mosque at Jenne is typical of West African architecture in its building material, which is mud. Now just think a bit of what's implied in building in mud. Mud may have plenty of compressive strength, that is to say that it won't crumble under direct vertical pressure, but it doesn't have much strength laterally. So if you're building domes, vaults, even a flat roof, and using mud for the supports, you have to make the walls very, very thick. You have to make the supports very, very frequent, and the spaces in between them quite narrow.
Lots of pillars there, but it's quite dark and very silent. So it's really the spiritual experience of simplicity. So they don't have money, but they have traditions. And the Imam there told me our richness is our roots. And this is where, coming from some other parts of the world, when you have all these great things, simplicity, deep commitment towards God, and within the mosque, this was my feeling.
In Jenne, the town centre comes to life every Friday, the most important day of the Muslim week. Hundreds arrive from other smaller towns and villages. They come to say their prayers and to meet up and shop at the local market, which only operates on Fridays. Amadou is here to join this large congregation of worshippers. Friday prayers are the prayers in the week that Muslims are obliged to perform in congregation together. They replace the early afternoon prayer. Like the Sunday service for Christians, Friday prayers always have a sermon delivered by the local imam.
The importance of the Jummah prayers. First, the importance or the greatness of Friday. It was on a Friday that God Almighty finished the creation of the earth, the heaven and earth. It was on a Friday that God the Almighty breathed life into Adam, who was the father of humanity. And so he has made that day a day of congregation and as a celebration.
Amadou can afford to go to Mecca with financial help from his parents. Most people in Mali cannot afford this journey. The third pillar of Islam, zakat, tries to deal with this disparity in wealth. Muslims are obliged to give 2.5% of their income to charity.
In the Quran there's this wonderful verse of the Quran called small kindnesses. God is sort of, woe unto you who does all of these things of praying, etc., these grandiose religious things, but you ignore, the smallest person in need.
Normally you will give zakat to those who deserve it, that's basically the poor. You can also give to members of your family or relative who are deserving or who are poor. In some Muslim countries you have institutions that collect zakat. They are, if you like, pious foundations that look after the orphans and so on and so forth. In certain Muslim countries the state collects zakat and then distributes it amongst the poor.
In Mali, most people live on less than 60 pence a day and wouldn't survive if it weren't for the charitable principles that are built into the Islamic faith. The need for social justice and equity in Islamic societies is greater now than ever before. Third pillar of Islam is a social concept that tries to deal with such issues. Thousands of miles away, as the sun sets, the call to prayer echoes at the Imam Mosque in Isfahan, in Iran.
Hayya ala salati, hayya ala salam. Hayya ala al-falah, hayya ala al-falah.
When this mosque was built, it was the most impressive building in the Persian Empire.
As you can see, it's a quiet, peaceful place to say your prayers, and there's history. You feel like thousands of people before you have said their prayers here, and then you feel that connection with them. You feel like you are sitting on the same stones that other Muslims sit. You're saying your prayers, you're saying the exact same sentences they said, and you're talking to the same God they said. So it gives you like a unity and to eternity. You feel like you're connected to the future and the past.
It is a building which encapsulates how the life of the mosque performs multiple roles, in addition to being a place of worship.
The Masjid-e-Imam, or Masjid-e-Shah as it used to be called, in Isfahan is, in some senses, the jewel in the crown of Persian architecture in the 16th and 17th centuries. It's by far the biggest mosque that was built in those centuries, and it was built as a statement of imperial power. It's got a huge open pool in the middle of the courtyard. Then it's got a couple of theological colleges clamped on either side of it. It's got a mosque for winter prayer attached to it as well. And it's just a reminder that the mosque in the Islamic world is not what the church is in the Christian world. It is place of worship, place of assembly, place of law, place of education. This is why the Muslim world doesn't have town halls. It doesn't have inns of court, because the mosque did all that. The mosque was a community center, and a mosque like this one is a reminder of that.
Rana Rahimpour is 25 years old and teaches English. She is a Shia Muslim. Shias form about 20% of the Muslim population, but are a majority in Iran. The split between Shia and Sunni Muslims, who form the majority, goes back 1400 years and is based on issues of leadership of the then Muslim community. Shias believe that the Prophet's family should have inherited the leadership. Both agree on the fundamentals of Islam and believe in the 5 pillars. Today, Iran is a theocratic Shia state run by a Shia clergy, with strict controls on the media, civil rights and women.
Well, I work during the day. I teach English, both in institutes and I have private students. And then in the evenings I hang out with my friends. We go to gym 3 times a week, we exercise. We do mountain climbing once a week on the weekend. We also go to concerts, cinemas, we have coffee together, we go to restaurants, they come to my place, I go to their place. Like any other young people all around the world. And we do have opposite-sex friends because we go to the same universities together. As long as you're a mature person, you know how to handle a situation with all different types of people. So I don't feel any pressure personally.
But you need to cover your head.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's the way we are all the time. So we're used to it. It's okay. It's not a problem for us.
But you don't have no choice in it.
Of course we have the choice. Yeah, in my country it's obligatory because of the rules. But at the end, when you go to home, it's up to you what you want to wear. So still you have the choice in your personal life how you want to live. But socially speaking, there's no problem with that.
Politics and religion are mixed up in Iranian life. Rana, like many other young Iranians, tries to keep a fine balance between them, trying to keep religion a personal matter.
I think it's a religion of peace. Maybe there have been some wrong views of it, but it is a religion of peace. It's a religion of calmness, if we get the true spirit of it. It advises to be patient. But unfortunately, some people have forgotten that at the moment. It gives you hope. It's full of hope, in my opinion. And that's why I'm in love with it.
Some of Rana's Shia beliefs and practices set her apart from the majority Sunni Muslims. But her faith in the 4th pillar of Islam, fasting in the month of Ramadan, is shared by all Muslims.
Well, I like Ramadan because I feel like I'm doing something that God wants me to do. You want to eat, the food is there, the water is there, but you don't do it simply because God asked you to do that. It's not easy, of course it's not easy. It's just like stopping yourself from doing something you like to do because your God wants you to do that. And that's why I like it.
The month of Ramadan during the lunar calendar, it's really important. It's the 9th month of the lunar calendar according to the Islamic tradition, and it is where, for the Muslims, first the Quran was revealed. So this is a month of reading and coming back to the text. The second is really where the Muslims are worshipping much more. So they are not drinking, not eating, but at the same time during the night they are praying much more than during the normal life. So this is also a spiritual commitment. It's quite demanding, in fact, and many Muslims at the end of the month are very tired because it's very demanding on the spiritual ground and in everything that we have to do.